Hello and welcome back. Welcome to our latest episode in our new series on inspiring leadership. And thank you also for the terrific feedback that you've sent in. It is very much appreciated and it's very welcome. The purpose of these podcasts, as you'll know by now, is quite simply to learn from the best. We want to understand what makes a great business leader. How do they focus? How do they get people to follow their vision? How do they motivate? How do they deal with failure? And how can they use their influence for the good of all of us? Albert Schweitzer said, "Example is not the main thing in influencing others, it is the only thing. We will learn from experiences, good and bad, and that will always be our best teacher. There's always something to learn. So why invent pastry when we can use our grandmother's recipes?" Hello and welcome back, and welcome to our latest episode in our new series on inspiring leadership. And welcome to today's guest, James Timpson. And James is the fifth generation of Timpsons, one of the UK's best loved brands. 70% of the revenues come from the key cutters and over 2,000 shops. But they also own brands such as Max Spielman, Johnson's the Dry Cleaners, Snappy Snaps, The Watch Lab, as well as others including hospitality companies, and his own pub, every man's dream. What they're recognised for, though, and why James has been invited to talk to us about his new book, is the amazing family culture that they have built right across the business. And it's that which we'd like to talk about. I've got the privilege of asking the questions, but then it will be your turn, and I'm giving a book away for what I consider to be the best question. So listen and think at the same time. Welcome, James.
Thank you.
First of all, I want to say congratulations on this fantastic book. And I do mean that, The Happy Index. But I also want to ask, what took you so long to write it?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm a sort of a natural writer. And, I sort of get stuck in and run the business and do lots of other things. And basically what happened is I went probably about 4 or 5 years ago for dinner with a friend of mine in London who's mates with Ollie Shah, who's the business editor of the Sunday Times. And basically, after a few bottles of wine, I agreed to write an article on business rates, which is probably the most boring subject you can think about. And I did that, 850 words. And he said, well, would you mind doing another one? Did another one. I can't remember what it was, something high streety, something like that. And then Luke Johnson, who was doing the regular weekly column, he basically had a little financial problem with Patisserie Valerie.
I remember that.
And couldn't continue. So Ollie said, listen, I'm in the shit. Would you mind, I need you to cover for a few weeks. And I was meant to do every other week, but then the other person dropped out. So then I ended up doing every week and 850 words by Wednesday night on something different. And so we did a year of it. And Rasheen, who's here, my wife, came up with the idea of putting it all into a book just so the kids could, because I literally had loads of newspaper cuttings in a folder. So to put it in a book for sort of posterity reasons. And I sent one of the books to Ollie Shah to say, thank you very much for allowing me to do this and for getting my message across about ethical capitalism and the fact that you can run a business by being kind to people. And it's nothing like The Apprentice and Dragon's Den and that kind of thing. And he gave it to his agent, who then did an auction, said, we can publish this. And then here we are. That's basically what happened.
I hope the rest of your answers aren't as long as that one, James. It was a great answer. And actually, I'm quite serious though when I say, because I think we've spoken, and I think there is a responsibility on people like you who are really admired in the business world to get out and to share the secret sauce and to help others to run businesses in the way you do. So I'm slightly tongue-in-cheek, but I also do mean it. I think it is. As we've been talking to people earlier, I think there's some great business books out there. There's a lot of poor business books that aren't written by people who've never really run a business. So it's actually great to get a book like yours from someone who really has run a business and really faced the things that you're talking about. So well done. The book is called The Happy Index. And what I want to do really is kind of structure this discussion a little bit about you, what is the Happy Index, and why you came to write it, a little bit about leadership, a little bit what Timpson's does that's particularly special, and then finally about Timpson's in the community, because I know you're doing a massive amount in the community as well. So perhaps we could start by telling us, what is the Happy Index?
So the Happy Index is a survey that we do in our business once a year, every April, goes to every colleague, and it's our way of determining how healthy the business is. And we ask colleagues one simple question: on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you with your area manager or team leader? And if you want to write a comment, you can write a comment, and that's it. And basically what we are judging is how successful our leaders are at being kind and inspiring their colleagues so that they're happy. Because we know that if our colleagues are really happy, they give amazing service, so customers are happy, the shops take the most amount of money, and we make a good profit. And there is a direct correlation in our business between our colleagues that are happy and the amount of money we make. So rather than focusing on finance and margins and marketing plans and all the other things, just focus on colleagues being happy, and everything else seems to sort itself out. So for our leaders, this is a big deal, the Happy Index, because when they get the results through, it's a bit make or break. Because if you don't get a good score, you probably won't be a leader for very long.
That's great. But can I just take it back to you a little bit? And I don't want this to be too personal, but you do come from an amazing family, James. And I'm sure that family has affected how you think about the business and the culture and things like that. Can you just tell us about your upbringing a little bit and how that was? And tell us a bit about your mother, who was quite amazing as well. And it's not just your father's amazing, what he did, but your mother's also incredibly amazing.
Well, let me go. I'm going to try and give you a short answer, because I noted you said
there's
it's
no
too long.
chance, is there?
So the business was founded about half a mile away from here by my great-great-grandfather in 1865, selling shoelaces on his bicycle. His son, my great-grandfather, known as Mr. Will, was the guy that really grew the business around the country. And he was renowned in the business for being philanthropic, for helping people who are having a difficult time, especially after the war, when lots of people came home and they had, they needed financial support from the business. My grandfather was running the business at a difficult time. Everything went wrong. The family fell out. And then my dad bought the business back. And so I've been involved since 1995. So the business has been a family business for most of the time, and it has had this philanthropic vein of supporting the colleagues along the way. My mum my mum died 8 years ago, and I'm sure some of you have met my mum over the years. She's an amazing woman. In some ways, now she's no longer here, you sort of look back and quite complex in lots of ways. But she was a foster carer, and I was brought up with lots of foster children. My dad was at work virtually the whole. I remember him basically being at work most of the time, and my mum was the real driving force, helping people. And then Rasheen and I met when we were at university, and so we've been sort of on this journey together for 30 odd years. And and what my dad has been amazing at is communicating how our culture works and allowing me to do it, because not everybody would be happy there. I mean, I was 29 when I started running the business, of letting me sort of introduce all these new ideas on culture and supporting me to do it. So it's been a combination of lots of people's ideas and history as well. But being a family business helps.
Yeah. And so now you've taken on the family business. Now, what does success mean to you in the business? Is it money? Is it driven by money? What is success?
I'm competitive and I'm really commercial. But for me, what success is going into one of our shops and it's absolutely spot on. Standards are great, colleagues are happy, sales figures are good. There's no better feeling in business than seeing when everything works properly, when the orchestra is perfectly timed. And for me, it's about colleagues being happy and loving turning up for work.
And I love that. We will go into much more about that. I think about how you talk about, in the book, you talk about the most important data is about how happy the workforce is. And I think you said, I can't remember what page it is, but you talk about a couple of things that you receive once a week and then once a month, which are basically happiness reports. How would you describe those?
So every week we do a survey. It goes out to every colleague, just says, how are you feeling on a scale of 1 to 10? Our average score is about 8.5. Last week was 8.2. Nearer payday, it gets up to 8.7. But it's just a way of us spotting when something's going wrong in colleagues' lives. So they're consistently scoring themselves a 10, then it goes down to a 4. So it's our leaders, right? So it's our leaders' job to make sure that we can jump in and help, because most of the problems colleagues have is nothing to do with work. It's something at home. It's money problems, health problems, problems with family, and so on. And it's the leader's job to recognise that and to be able to jump in. So we measure that every week. And obviously I get the cash figure every day. We measure how much money we have in the bank compared to the same day last year, which is really the way we run the business, the finance side of the business. And then we do our annual Happy Index survey.
So I remember a couple of years ago went to hear a talk of a friend of mine, actually, and he gave the talk, and he'd been married for about 40 years. And he said, my wife doesn't make me happy, which was a bit of a shock to everyone who knew him in the audience. But the point that he was making was, it's not my job. It's not her job to make me happy. It's my job to make me happy. So how can an environment, how can a workplace help someone to be happy?
People spend a long time at work. And I've met too many people who turn up for work and they're not happy. They don't like it. They're in the wrong job. They're in a culture that doesn't share the same values that they have. And it affects people's health, mental health, physical health. So to us, not everybody likes our culture. It doesn't work for everybody. But if we can inspire our colleagues to be on the front foot and love coming to work, and it to be a really positive part of their life, then that is a fantastic thing for anybody to do person to person, but also it puts money in the till. And
do you, if you walk into a Timpson store or the Timpsons, you don't call it the head office, do you?
No, Timpson House.
Timpson House. Why don't you call it the head office?
Because head office implies that it's like the control centre.
Yeah, great.
And actually, the shops are where the action is, and it's our job to support them. We could say support centre, but then everyone else did that, so probably got to think of another name.
So when people walk in there, do they visibly feel the culture?
Yes. What you will feel, for those of you who've been into Timpson House, you'll find a very similar type of person consistently across the business. Whether it's in IT, finance, property, a similar kind of personality. And there's a buzz about the place, there's an informality. You will have no idea how much people are paid because we don't sort of have the pecking order of the fancy offices and all this sort of stuff.
And there's some great titles for some people in the business, isn't there? Perhaps you could share that with us a little bit.
I always go against the sort of corporatization of companies. So, I'm probably the worst one. I'm chief executive, which I sort of feel a bit uncomfortable about, really. When you go to the office, our Paul and Lauren on reception, they're not receptionists, they're directors of Smiles. Janet is our director of happiness, which is actually one of the most important positions I've appointed in the last 10 years, because basically her job is spending time with colleagues who are unhappy, but there's a real focus on making sure that all the benefits and everything we have to support colleagues is working and being used. If we have dogs in the office, they're always director of entertainment. And we've got lots of silly titles like that.
I think I read as well that I forgot what I was going to say. That's okay. I hope that's going to get edited out, actually, because that won't look good. I've been there. I know exactly what you're saying. There is that kind of amazing feel around the place. Can I just move on then to talk a little bit about, and then we'll come back, I think, to talk about the culture a little bit more. But you, as you say, are the Chief Executive Officer, so you are the main business leader in the organisation. What is it about leadership that's so important?
In
any organisation. I always look and think that leadership, whether you are running a small village hall or you're in the biggest company in the world or whatever you're running, a lot of things start with leadership. How do you feel about your job as a leader in the business?
I don't feel I'm leading for myself. I feel I'm leading for my colleagues. And I see too many leaders who are in it for themselves. They're in for the short-term gain. They're trying to make as much money as they can and they don't really care who they tread on together. That's like the worst example. But I see that too much. And for me, I want my colleagues to shine. And I think that's what leadership is about. It's about you are no more important than anybody else in the business. And even though I get paid lots to do my job, I'm no more important than someone who started today. So for me, the job is about helping them be the best they can be and loving their job.
And what are there specific qualities that you need in order to be able to do that as a leader?
Let me give you one example. Let me give you an example. You need to be on it. You need to be present. So this morning, Rasheen and I were on the train coming back from London, and someone sent me an old advert for Greggs in the 1970s, this lovely old advert. So I forwarded it to another Rasheen in my life, Rasheen Curry, who runs Greggs, and said, we saw this, we thought it was funny. 2 minutes later, bang, you get a reply. Emailed another friend of ours who's a chief exec, 5 minutes later, bang, reply. They're sort of, I think one of the things about leadership, successful leadership, as I've seen, is they're just on it, and they make decisions quickly, and they don't hide behind other people, and they're happy just to get stuck in and put their head up.
And one of the things that you're saying, it really does come through the book, and I think you very specifically talk about it, is how important kindness is as a leader. Could you just expand on that? What do you mean by that? Kindness as a leader?
There are lots of there are two different ways we do it. One is around our culture, and there's nothing written down about this. It's just how we lead, how our, specifically area managers, they're the main leaders in our business. We have 58 area managers who are basically responsible for 95% of our colleagues. And it's their job to inspire their colleagues and ensure they're happy. And the way they do that is by being kind to them and knowing them. But we also have tools that we use, specific tools, which are the benefits, which is the holidays, dreams come true, the scratch cards, the days off, the birthdays off, and all this kind of stuff. They are targeted. So there are some colleagues in our business that we don't think are right for the business. We've recruited them in error, or we've bought a business that includes them, and we don't think that they're going to be happy with us. Not that they're bad people, not that they're not talented people. They may be brilliant at shoe repairing or dry cleaning, but their personality doesn't fit our culture and our values. So you will find some people in our business that don't like it. There'll probably be 5% that just don't like it. They will see our culture as a bit too extreme, that they don't feel that they are appreciated, but we just don't think they're right. So we are quite hard. Even though we're very kind, I would say we're commercially hard.
Running a purpose-driven business, finding resources and collaborators, keeping focus and momentum while staying true to your vision. With 80% of startups failing in their first year, being a business founder can be lonely.
At GC Crescendo, you can find a community of inspiring and like-minded founders.
Share your experiences, stories, and collective knowledge.
Build trusted relationships and help each other succeed.
Realise your dreams and make the world a better place.
Plus, sign up today for as little as £10 a month and get your first month completely free.
Discover the place where purpose-led founders connect, learn, and thrive together. Find out more at gccrescendo.com.
And I think it is interesting, isn't it, when you talk about culture in that regard as well, that every organisation has a culture. It just has a culture, and whether you design it or not. And most people don't design that culture. It just happens, and therefore it creates a culture that quite often mirrors what the business leader is like in that particular business or organisation. Is your culture specifically designed that? Does it just happen now? Or is there a specific design saying this is how we're going to create this culture of kindness? And do you still have to think about that?
We are on culture the whole time. We talk about culture and we do culture more than anything else, even now. But a lot of what we do is copied from other people. A lot of the ideas are nicked from great businesses that...
Well, most of ours are nicked from you, James.
Well, most of ours, I've nicked some from you as well. So we haven't sort of just invented it all. Other people are doing this. We've just sort of put it into our language and made it work.
What can we do? There's people here who will go back to the workplace and they might not have the opportunity that you have because they're not the business leader organisation. Is there something that they can do to try and get that culture in their own organisation?
I think you need to understand the timescale and how long this actually takes to get a culture changed. Minimum 3 years, and realistically it's 5 years until a culture feels that it's aligned. So, for example, when we bought a business recently called the Watch Lab and In-Time Watch Repair. So we've got 55 watch repair shops, and we've had them for maybe 18 months, maybe 2 years, and we're still way behind on culture. I can go into the shops, it just doesn't feel the same because it just takes time for people to trust our culture and for us to get the right mix of personalities in that business. So for me, I would say you need to give yourself a longer period than you think, but also you need to be brave at taking decisions on people who are just not right. And what I see over and over again is businesses that, for lots of good reasons, just won't tackle the problem people. And it becomes an HR problem, and actually it's a leadership problem. Leaders like to pass people problems to HR when actually it's your job to sort it out.
Yeah. I think business leaders, do often hide behind HR, or lawyers. Lawyers or HR, they tend to hide behind, don't we? Shouldn't say that, should I?
It's good for your business, though.
One of the things you talk about in the book as well, and I love this, is you talk about the power of gratitude. And I thought this was quite amazing for a business leader to talk about this because, we're all reading things about mindfulness and gratitude and how important it is to our mental health, etc. But to hear a business leader actually talk about the power of gratitude, I thought was really refreshing. Do you want to say something about that?
How many people do you meet and you say, what company do you work for? And they'll say, I don't know, make it up, British Gas. And they'll say, I'm just a number. People often feel just a number. And I think leaders have a real role. You've got to spend a lot of time on making people feel valued and feeling that they're not a number. They are a person. They're equally as important as anybody else. And that's where gratitude comes in. So again, it's cultural, but also we give our teams the tools to do gratitude. So I mentioned about scratch cards. So we give out loads and loads of scratch cards. Small prizes, £5, £10, a meal out, and that kind of stuff. And it doesn't go to everybody, but it's a way of saying thank you. We do lots of letters, lots and lots of letters. Our area managers know when all their colleagues' birthdays are coming up, so they write them a card and they give them a small gift. And again, it's all just we invent ways of saying thank you.
That's great. That's awesome. I read in the book as well that you don't have any numbers in the business. What does that mean? Should you have KPIs?
Not really. I mean, I ran any KPIs last year. Everything's last year. Did the shop take more money than last year? Normally when the shop doesn't, for a longer period, for over like 6-7 weeks, is because the colleague in there this year is not as good as they were last year. And it may be the same colleague. That's normally when something's going wrong in their lives. But what we're interested in is how much cash we have in the bank every day compared to the same day last year. I go through the monthly management accounts. It takes me about an hour. After about half an hour, my eyes start glazing over a bit, really. And then I do every 3 months, I go through every shop's P&L. And that's it.
It's interesting. I remember reading, actually, Jack Welch when he was at GE a few years ago. And he talked very much how, when he first went into business, he just focused on the numbers. That's what he did. He focused on the numbers. He said it was only when he started to focus on the behaviours that did he realise how good the numbers could become, which I think is very similar to what you're saying.
So let me give you an example. At the moment, we're having a big push on car keys. Not a very sexy business, but we like car keys. And I could spend hours looking at all the data, supplier data, stock numbers, all this kind of stuff. The best way to work out how to sell more car keys is to get 6 or 7 colleagues who love car keys in a room and say, what do we need to do to help you take more money? They'll give you a list. You just put it into action. It tells you far more than any spreadsheet.
Right, I have got in front of me a number of very short questions, which you can say yes or no, or
Okay.
or you can talk. Actually, I'm not going to stop you talking, am I? So, who would you say is the person that has influenced you the most?
Probably Rasheen, my wife. We've been married for nearly 27 years.
You're not just saying that because it's Valentine's Day, are you?
No.
What book have you read that's had the most influence on you?
Julian Rich's book, The Richer Way.
Richer Way, yeah.
Every page I turned was like, wow, it makes sense now. These things I've been thinking, someone else has done this. It makes sense.
And I think that confirms it, doesn't it? Julian Richer I know he's a good friend of yours now, isn't he? But actually, the effect that he had on the retail market was phenomenal, wasn't it? And again, to write a book with someone who's really been there and done it. I've read that book. I would agree.
He's a
with you. It's an
genius.
awesome book. Yeah.
He's mad. He's also a genius.
What's the best advice that you would give to someone who's setting out today?
Keep things really simple and be a follower, not a leader, when it comes to new ideas. We've done... we don't do anything new, anything clever. We just take ideas that have already been done quite a few times and just try and do it better.
And I think actually in the book you talk about one of the things that you have to do is say no. And I think leaders have to say no more than most people think they have to say no.
I would say I say no to over 95% of all the suggestions that come forward to us in the business. It's not because they're bad suggestions, but they complicate things.
What makes you laugh?
I like funny things on TikTok or some of the things. So we have our family WhatsApp group, and it's some of the stuff on the family WhatsApp group that's funny.
Yeah, actually, it's kind of like I haven't been into Instagram that long, but now I can find myself in the evening scrolling through Instagram and just laughing. It's a bit sad, actually, I think. What's the secret about you that would surprise those who think they know you well?
I'm really into Bristol cars.
Really?
And I have no idea how they work, but I think they're beautiful and I like driving them. And when anything goes wrong, I have no idea how to fix them. But they go wrong a lot.
Would you rather have less work to do or more work to do?
Less work to do.
Really? What's the last book to make you laugh, or the last book that you would recommend?
The last book that made me laugh was a book called The Yellow Earl, all about the Earl of Lonsdale, who lived this most ridiculous... no one would live a life like that anymore. And so that was, it's just nuts.
Well, we're in a bookshop, so we'll make sure we get that in for you all.
It is, honestly, it's a wonderful book.
Okay.
Everyone I've recommended to read that book has absolutely loved it.
Please get that book in for me at least. And finally, if you didn't know your actual age, how old would you be?
Definitely 34. I'm 52, but I'm definitely 34.
Okay, fine. Actually, just before... what I do want to do is move out and talk about the work that you've done with ex-offenders now, which I just think is trailblazing in industry, and I want to talk about that. But I do want to just ask one question, which is this contrary to what you're saying? You talk in the book a lot about you're not in favour of hybrid working. You know, we're coming out of the pandemic. There is a real push on kind of people not being in the office, etc., and you don't think it's a good way forward. Do you want to just comment on that?
I don't think it's a good way forward for our business. And I also worry about company cultures when no one is with one another physically. We're human beings. We like to be together. We need to be together. So in our business, we have 4,000 colleagues who open up the door in a shop every day. They have no choice whether they work from home or not. They have to be in the shop. And all of our support colleagues in the office need to be there to pick up the phone to support them. So actually, practically, we need to be in the office, a lot of it. But I actually think culturally, it helps our business because we are together. But we have a responsibility as leaders to make sure the office is a place people want to be. Mm-hmm. So that's why we really invest in, you get free breakfast, you have an amazing lunch for £4.50, we've got a gym, we've got a swimming pool, we've got all these different things, you can come and go as you please. So if you're going to have an office, you've got to be in the entertainment business a bit. You need to attract people in.
And I think you said in that part of the book as well. Actually, I can't remember, the heading of the chapter is something you don't have a hybrid working, but you give lots of days off, don't you? And you feel that's a real bonus. And I think it is. Actually, do you want to share some of those? Because I think you give a day off if it's someone's wedding or if the dog dies or something, don't you?
Yeah, so we originally got the idea off a friend of ours, Rich and Dawn O'Sullivan, who used to run Millie's Cookies, and they did Batty knows them as well. They were the first people to do a birthday off. I mean, quite a lot of people do it now. It's like a sort of a normal benefit. And then we thought we'd go a bit further because a colleague I met was really upset because she ran out of holidays and couldn't take her daughter to school for her first day at school. So everyone needs their first day. So we did that one. And then another colleague said, well, I've just become a granny. I can't have it. So then when you become a granny or grandpa day. And then we had the pet bereavement day because some colleagues, when their pets die, are very, very upset, far more than I realised, and I probably was when our pets died. And again, it's just one of these things. It doesn't happen very often in people's lives, apart from birthdays, obviously. But it's a great benefit. And obviously, when someone's applying to us for a job, they're applying to us, Greg's, Marks and Spencer's. But if we can have these extra benefits, it makes a difference to us as an employer brand.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. Can we just, in this last section, talk about some of the work that you do philanthropically, for want of a better word? I'm not sure I particularly like that word, but in particular about the work you've done with ex-offenders, because you are at the vanguard of that. I know there's lots of other companies now doing it. I know Maggie's here as well, does some amazing work in that direction. Can you just talk about why did it happen? How did you get into it? And why is it so good? And what are you trying to achieve with it?
We employ people from prison because they're really good. And we found that that prisons are just as good a place to look for talent as the job centre or Indeed or anything like that. Started 22 years ago when Rashid and I were invited into Thorncross Prison in Warrington on just like a local business person having a look. The young guy showed me around. Matthew was brilliant. He couldn't get a job in his release, so I said, well, give us a ring and I'll give you a job. Took him on. Didn't tell anyone in the business what I was doing. Spent about another 2 years going around the prisons in the Northwest on a Friday afternoon, walking the wings with the governors just looking for sparky people, basically. Made some big mistakes, got some of the right people, then told everybody in the business what I'd done, and they were like, these people are fantastic, go and get me some more. And also, then don't forget, 1 in 4 adult men in this country have a criminal conviction more than a driving offence. So it's actually quite normal that people break the law and get into trouble. But then often they find it very difficult to get a job on release. So kept going. Then I started opening up workshops, and then I started helping other companies do it. Like Greg's was the first one we really supported, and then then I set up the Employers Forum for Reducing and Reoffending with the Ministry of Justice, and then sort of got a bit. Sort of kept going really and doing the various prison things. And the thing that most recently I'm really proud about is what Maggie's involved in is the Employment Advisory Board. So we've set up these boards with inspirational leaders like Maggie in the 92 release prisons. And when we first started, we had 14% of men and women leaving prison getting a job after 6 months, and we're now at 33%. And I'm not saying the boards are the only thing that's made that difference, but it's been incredible. I've never seen anything like it, the cultural transformation in a prison.
And what are they like as... It sounds a little bit of an insensitive question, really, but what are they like as workers for you then? The loyalty, I guess, is a lot stronger than a person who doesn't have that restriction on them.
Yeah, they're more loyal. They're more loyal. They're just as honest as anybody else, and they'll stay with you longer because they don't have as many options. And also, we're the people that gave them that second chance. When you go into one of our shops, you have no idea whether someone's been to prison or not. You don't really care as long as they give you really good service. I mean, I know some people go into our shops because they think it's a really good thing that we do. And I also know some people refuse to go into our shops because of what we do, and that's okay. We also have people that think that 100% of all of our colleagues have been to prison. It's not. It's about 1 in 9. But it's something I'm really, really proud of.
Does everyone know within the organisation who has been to prison or who's not?
Sometimes, but people don't really care.
Do they not?
I think the sort of when you first join the business from prison, there's a lot of training that you're given in prison around about discussing your sentence and what you did and how you handle that difficult conversation. But if someone turns up on time, they're great at serving customers, and the figures are good, no one cares.
Can you tell us about some of the other things that you do in the community? Because you do quite a few things, don't you, as well? It'd be good to share those.
So I chair the Prison Reform Trust. So I've got 1 more year to go there, then I've done my 9 years. So we're now about to recruit a chair, so if anybody's interested in taking that one on. I was a trustee for Tate for 6 years. I think I did 6 years. And I found that quite tricky. I didn't find that straightforward because I thought it was going to be really about philanthropy and the nation's art and all this sort of stuff. It wasn't. It wasn't really as simple as that. And then we have the Alex Timpson Trust, which was set up in my mum's name, where when you go into our shops, we do loads of jobs for free. So 4% of all of our transactions we do for free. And ironically, the shops that give more things away for free take the most amount of money. And the more you give away for free, the more customers keep coming back. So we ask you to put £1 in the box and then we match that. So that's like 20 grand a week we get in from that, and that's what we provide foster families with free holidays for. Essentially, that's what we do there. It's involved in that, and then I'm the Chancellor at Keele University, which is not exactly philanthropic, but it's something that I really enjoy giving back to, and then we sort of get involved in lots of other projects. We've got one of our star strikers from Altrincham Football Club living with us at the moment, so we do lots of things at lots of different levels.
Good. And just looking, I think this is amazing. I think what you've done is fantastic, James. I really do. I'm not saying that, but I think you are a real beacon for business leadership in this country, and I'm genuinely really, really delighted that you've written this book. So we will promote it in the bookshop and wherever we can, as much as we possibly can. James, I think he's going to sign some books
Could I say
afterwards?
that all the money that this book has raised and all the advance that was given, which is like a lot of money, that's why I feel like quite guilty, because I need to really help them push the sales. All of it goes to Prison Reform Trust.
Fantastic. That's even better. It's even better. Just tell us about what do you want to achieve? What do you want to achieve over the next 12 months, the next 5 years? What are you looking to do?
I think the business has got a long way to go. Even though we've got 2,100 shops, I still think we can get to 2,500, maybe 3,000 shops. We've got other businesses. We've got Rasheen and I spent a lot of time. We bought a hotel for Maggie to go to in Morzine so she can go and have a good après ski. So we've got a big project in Morzine, which we're doing. So we're looking forward to that. So all the businesses we have, I feel, have the ability to grow more. And I think that's really, you need to have a business where you still feel you can open up shops and you can do new things. So from a business perspective, I'm really excited. Over the next 6 months, a lot of my philanthropic things, I've just finished doing a review into prison officer training for the Ministry of Justice. So that finishes in 4 weeks' time. Prison Reform Trust finishes this year. The Employment Advisory Boards, we're going to moving on from there at some point. So I'm going to make sure I don't look for too much trouble, but I'm really ambitious for the business, and I'm also really ambitious for our family. You know, our 3 kids are all now left university, and I want to spend more time with them, mentoring them in business.
That's great. I've loved that. I feel really privileged being here. Who wants to ask the first question? There you go.
What tactics do you use to maintain resilience when obviously you have life stress, business or otherwise?
I think because I'm 52 and I've been running the business for quite a long time, I've sort of seen a lot of the problems when they come up. So I sort of know where it's going to end up or how to deal with them. The hardest one we had was COVID, when we had to shut all the shops and send everyone home. And even though it was really stressful and very difficult and we had to make colleagues redundant, I quite like a crisis. I quite like it when you sort of get...
Gosh, we're so opposites in that regard, James.
And
I hate the crisis.
I work with amazing people, and they're the ones that I love working with, working it all through and talking it through. And I'm very lucky that they've all... so Paresh, our finance director, we've worked together for 20 years, and that, those long-term relationships really help you get through difficult times.
Thank you. Another question.
James, I was lucky enough to read the sampler, so I've read the first half of the book. I haven't read the second half, but there's a lot of really good, practically applicable, simple methodologies in there. You've clearly got a business philosophy and a great culture that is built on years of experience. But you must have had the odd failure. What's the best failure that you've ever learned from? What's the best thing that ever went wrong?
We haven't got enough time to go through all the failures. I think the biggest failure is when you make a wrong call on a person. A business is you're losing money, but when it comes to people, that's tough. And it's when you've over promoted someone. I think that is the worst thing you can really do to someone. And it's no one's fault at the time. They go from being a great colleague, doing really well in their job, and then you put them in this bigger position, they get more money, and it all goes wrong. And it's actually not their fault, it's your fault. So it's how you have those difficult conversations to hopefully get them back to what they were doing before when they were successful, and that's what you want to do. So I would say the biggest failure is always around people. We bought businesses we shouldn't have done. I've owned shops that have been an absolute disaster. You sort of try and shut them as quickly as you can. In fact, you always remember the problem shops you open rather than the ones that have been a success. But I would say people.
Yeah. Andy?
Hi. Since the last general election, I could see two kind of trends. One is that cost of living crisis, etc., has made people worse off, and secondly, that government and business have not, especially Conservative government and business, has not got on in the way that is traditional. And Boris Johnson said something rude about business, which seems to have sort of continued with his successors. You know, if there was a change of government, or rather, forget the politics. You know, what can business do to, I suppose, communicate that profit is not a dirty word and that capitalism is still working for everyone?
When we publish our annual accounts, which I think we're going to do next week, we will add up how much tax we've contributed to the economy. I think we're like a top 10 taxpayer in the whole country. And we do that by people turning up to work every morning and working really, really hard and putting £8.50 in the till. And that ends up sending the government over £100 million a year. So they need us, but we need them. And it's understanding the challenges that we face. But sometimes, you know, if you look at it, you go, we're just here to collect tax. But we've got to work within this environment to make a profit. And it's not just about making a profit, it's about how you contribute as well. So one of the things that you have to do in your accounts, which you know this is, on the front page of your account, you have to say what your political donations were for the year, 0 for us. And then on page 168, you have to say what your charitable donations have been. That should be on the front page. That should be on the front page, and it should be as a percentage of your profit and how it compares to last year. Then you can compare how businesses will operate, and you will be able to compare. The journalists will be able to compare how BP does compared to Shell and so on, because I believe it's not just about making profit; it's about being respectful to the communities that you serve, and government needs to encourage us to do that a lot more. You know, we have directors' responsibilities, which we all take really seriously. It's like the thing, you have to do everything that the auditors say, and we do it. And I think they need to use that lever to encourage companies to it's not just about paying tax, it's about being good companies and being good employers.
Sounds like another column there for you.
Thank you.
You spoke a little bit about how hard it is to change a company's culture. Do you think it's easier to build that up from the beginning? And what are the main sort of considerations you think about when you start building that up from starting a new branch or starting a new core business?
So let me give you an example. When we do acquisitions, what we find is the senior team, I'm making the numbers up, say there's 8 leaders. There's probably 1 or 2 that we really will keep, maybe 1. But it's how we integrate them into our culture. That's a really difficult one. But we prefer buying big, complex businesses that have gone bust. That's the quickest way to turn them around and make money. It's really hard starting a new business. Let me give you another example. We have a barbershop business. It makes a profit. If we've got into profit, it's brilliantly run by Byron, and we have 8 little barbershops in supermarket car parks. From getting from 8 to 9 is hard work, but in the Timpson business, buying another chain of 20 shops isn't much easier. So it's how you get scale. So when you do anything new, you make mistakes for 5 years. We've made so many mistakes with our barber business. How you get the right barbers, what you charge, how it all works, the hours you do you do a booking system, not do a booking system. It's so much easier just getting more and more of what you do.
It is a very good question, though, isn't it? Because I think the statistics show that lots of mergers and acquisitions fail because they've not been able to merge the cultures. You know, they've looked at the numbers and thought it works great on paper, but actually they've not been able to merge the cultures. So you would think from that, perhaps it's easier to start from scratch and build a culture from scratch, or at least really think about what you're doing and how you're going ahead. Any other questions? Yeah, Stephen.
You mentioned Julian Richer, who you obviously hold in high regard. Your business is 5th generation family. He has decided or has changed his business to employee ownership. Not a direct question about your business, but your thoughts, please, on employee ownership of businesses in relation to your approach to business and philanthropy, if I'm allowed to use that word.
Yeah, the EOPs, the people who've done EOPs, are generally businesses that have cultures that I admire, and I think they do it for very good reasons. I mean, Julian and his wife have no kids to pass the business on to, and that's his real reason for doing that. It's very tax advantageous, like unbelievably good. So I've already read in the paper, I think it was yesterday, that they're starting to sort of pull back on some of the more elaborate wheezes people are using to take advantage of that. But I do think it's a really good example of how you can reward the people who work in the business. In fact, our son was working for Richer Sounds a couple of years ago when it was an EOP, and they run it just as hard as they were running it before. So I don't think people should see it as an easy, it's an easy ride for people because they are a shareholder of the business. I mean, if you look at what's happening with John Lewis Partnership, it's not going very well there at the moment. I wouldn't say they're the best example. I mean, when they came out with a policy, they were doing really well, but unfortunately things have got off for them. But
so, James, it's so interesting listening to you. I work in the NHS, and I've got to admit I'm feeling a bit out of place here. I'm working in an organisation that's going through a really tough time, and there's a lot of things happening that are not going to contribute to the happiness factor in terms of working conditions and pay, etc., etc. So my question to you is, what can you advise, what could we take from Timpson's and the NHS when we're in deficit, we're trying to save money, and a lot of the things that you've mentioned, like giving people a day off for special events or free meals, a lot of leaders in the NHS would see, well, that's going to like reduce our productivity or reduce like clinical time, so we can't possibly do that. I think we did get like birthdays off, but actually you had to take it off your annual leave, so it wasn't actually an extra day's leave at all, which was almost like even worse. So are there any words of wisdom that you can share with me as a clinical leader?
we get approached a lot by NHS colleagues about culture and how they can learn from what we do. And I think the NHS is sort of typical of lots of public sector organisations which are not very good at HR. Lots of HR issues there that are as a result of a culture that is on the back foot and is very risk averse and is very finance controlled. The NHS do have an example. A guy called Paul Devlin is an expert in happiness in the NHS, and he's been drafted into 4 now failing NHS trusts, and he's worked really hard on the culture of happiness in that organisation. And every time there's been a dramatic increase in not just the happiness of the people who work there, but the health outcomes of the people who come into them. So it can be done, but I do feel it's just this sort of political risk aversion to running a business the way we do it.
It is interesting, isn't it? I feel as though we almost need to make the NHS smaller and more local. What to do? I remember I was talking to a chief executive of a trust, and he was very proud of, in his trust, as you came in the front door, it would say only 10 complaints this week, or only 15 complaints this week. And that struck you as that was the culture, to kind of, it just didn't have the feel that you're talking about.
And one of the things as well, so our office is right next door to Withenshaw Hospital. Why when you drive past there's litter everywhere? Why are the signs all coming away and the standards aren't good enough? I think you need to start as well with standards so people are really proud of where they work.
What do you want your legacy to be in years to come? And if you could share that with us.
I haven't really thought about that. I think our kids are interested in the business, and I think we've got responsibility to help them take on responsibility and understand how we lead. I'm not saying it's the right way for them, but to understand how it all works. I'd like to think when it comes to prisons, I've managed to change the feeling of business leaders around employing ex-offenders. And I also like to think that we've changed the culture within prisons around employment. I'll be happy with that.
Some questions at the front here.
Oh, hi. Looking at the happy index in detail and the culture change, do you ever find, especially being sort of fueled by set pieces like the birthday day off, etc., do you ever feel that it gets normalised and you have to reinvent it for it to continually be successful?
Good question. So our problem is when colleagues have been with us a long time or haven't really had jobs anywhere else, they think what we do is normal. So sometimes I really like it when someone is, say they joined us when they were, 21, and they leave when they're 26. I'm actually okay with that because they're probably going to come back in 3 years' time. We actually have Natasha, who we were talking to one of your colleagues earlier on about Natasha, who works for us. On her badge, it says, "The grass ain't greener." But no, people do take it for granted. It's a problem.
Hi. Both of you have mentioned the word localism, and when you talk about Timpson's and the initiatives that you have been so engaged with, whether it's prisons or your local community, do you think that that has really helped Timpson's be a success? And given that we're so focused at the minute, or everyone's so focused on globalism and everything going bigger and growth and global, do you think that localism is actually the key to a lot of success for larger businesses?
I'm just, when you ask that question, I was thinking of our shop. So if you take our shop in Aberdeen, we've got about 9 shops in Aberdeen. Our colleagues in Aberdeen can order whatever stock they want from the warehouse list. They can charge whatever they want, as long as they don't overcharge. They can do discounts and deals, and they can speak to customers however they want to, however it works in Aberdeen. And then you go to Northern Ireland, it's completely different in Northern Ireland. Our shops in London, again, are completely different. The culture is just very, very different. So I think you just got to trust people to get on with it and not expect them to for every shop to be the same. And our colleagues in our shops, they're local people. They know their customers. They know the language. They know how it works. And what we want is I would say about 40% of our shops are run by colleagues who are in that shop for years on end. And they just are part of the furniture, and that's important.
I do love the point, though, and I've often said that I think within the square mile of every business is a microcosm of every issue in the country. Whether that's homelessness, whether it's poverty, lack of opportunity, disability, they're all there within the square mile of a business. So if business leaders recognise that and spoke to their people and got involved in that, and then everybody did that, we could make a very, very big difference. So I do love it. It's a great question. Any more? One more question, please. Yes.
I've got 4.
4.
I'll do quick answers if you want.
Yeah, quick answers. 4 questions, but quick answers.
Go on, Batty.
Hiya, James. You mentioned 2 phrases together. One was kindness, and the other one was being commercially hard. Can you tell us more about how those 2 things fit together?
Yeah, so we're very clear that some of our colleagues who we don't think are right for the business, we will be kind when they're with us, and we'll be kind to them, explaining to them why they need to leave. But they won't get the dreams come true. They won't get the holiday homes, because I want to invest in the colleagues that are right value-wise, and they're right for the business. So sometimes I feel a bit uncomfortable about that, because I can see why people won't like it and it could be seen unfair, but that's how we do it.
Hi, James. You talked about growing the business and the importance of culture. Is there a risk as you grow the business of losing control, and maintaining it as you grow more stores, maybe 2 Timpson houses?
I used to worry about that when we had 280 shops, whether we could get to 350, and we just sort of kept going. And if anything, the culture's got stronger. But we need to spend more time on communicating. We just spend a lot more time communicating the culture. Just before COVID, I spent 10 weeks doing road shows like this 5 times a day around the whole business, going through the culture, talking about it. And I think as the business gets bigger, you've got to do that. But that's where succession planning comes in to play. You need to make sure that the people coming up through the business, the future leaders, get it completely. And if they get it, if anything, the culture is far more potent now than it was 5 years ago.
Oh my word. So thank you for listening, all of you. And if you're listening on the podcast and you enjoyed it, then please do tell us and share it. Right, thank you so much. Off to Valentine's Day, some of you.
Thank you.